I'd like to welcome everybody today to a discussion that we're going to have in advance of, or actually to launch National Plant Health Week, which runs from the 8th of May to the 14th of May. Basically, the purpose of National Plant Health Week is so that we recognise the value of plants, both as crops, as food that we eat, but also as part of the natural environment. And embedded within National Plant Health Week is the International Day of Plant Health, which will take place on the 12th of May, which is a UN initiative and highlights the fact that plants are so important to fighting hunger, to alleviating poverty, and also to protect the environment as well. So as part of this discussion, I have a range of colleagues from across government and its agencies, and I'd like to introduce each of them in turn, and then I'll finish off by introducing myself. Maybe I should have done that right at the very beginning, sorry. So if I could start maybe with you, James. Okay.
Hi, thanks, Jerry. I'm James Knopp, the head of tree health in Scotland. And I suppose it's fair to say I work very closely with my counterparts in England, Wales, Northern Ireland. So we look at tree health across Great Britain and including Northern Ireland, just to help protect our trees, not just the ones in forests, but the ones across the whole of the landscape. How can we protect them from the pests and diseases that are coming our way?
Okay, if I could move on now, could you introduce yourself, please, Ian?
Hi, my name is Ian Tote. I'm the director of Scotland's Plant Health Centre. I work at the James Hutton Institute and I'm a pathologist working in agriculture on crops, mainly on potato.
And Fiona?
Hi, Jerry. Fiona Burnett. So I work for Scotland's Rural College and I'm sector lead in Scotland's Plant Health Centre for Agriculture. So kind of working on the plant health issues across our major crops, which are, of course, barley, cereals, potatoes, soft fruit and veg.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. And Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Ward. I'm the head of pathology at Forest Research. So we work across England, Scotland, Wales to provide research on pests and diseases that are key damaging pests and diseases of trees, woodlands and forests. So as well as doing research on those, we also provide advice for diagnostic service as well.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And I'm Jerry Sadler. I'm the Chief Plant Health Officer for Scotland. I'm responsible for plant health across both the farmed and the natural environment. And in many respects, my role is about coordination. So bringing in colleagues really from forestry, agriculture, horticulture, and the natural environment to ensure that we protect sort of plant health and plants wherever they may be. So maybe I could just start with some general questions. And I suppose the simplest one, and I suppose the whole raison d'etre behind Plant Health Week is, so why should we protect plant health? James, would you like to give us how important plant health is from a forestry perspective?
Yeah, well, I'm really lucky, Jerry. I live in the middle of the Caledonian pine forests. And when you think these trees are the direct descendants from the last ice age, so we're talking sort of 9,000 years ago, and these are the direct descendants. Yes, they've genetically modified in that time as the climate has changed and other factors have come in. But they're unique, really unique now in the country and really across the world in what they provide. And so how can we look after that going forward? How can we protect it? And with the changes that are going on in the world now with globalization and people moving and the speed that everything changes and moves, the threat from diseases and pests, not just to the trees, but to all our plants, is really increasing. And the genetic modification that naturally occurs isn't able to keep up with that. So we need to step in to try and help to preserve our landscape and what we've got. And it's a fabulous place. So we need to really protect that in the trees, but also in all our plants that are out there at the moment.
I think you make an interesting point, and in some respects, I suppose I'd like to bring in both Fiona and Lisa now to say, like maybe expand a little bit more on what, if you like, the plant health community can do to ensure really that we do protect plant life, whatever that be, whether that's in the natural environment, the farmed environment, or forestry for that matter. So maybe if we could start with you, Fiona, if that would be okay.
Well, I mean, Ian's kind of hinted there, Jerry, at the kind of yield losses that we can see where diseases get into crops. So we know that, for veg and potatoes, we could be looking at 20% of the crop loss. So that massively adds to the prices. And people really care about how their food is produced and how sustainably that's done. So, we've been working on integrated pest management options and communicating those. We know that farmers are really concerned about pesticide losses, and the public cares a lot about how their food is produced. So I think the kind of first things are about asking how their food is produced, being interested in how it's produced, and then making those choices when they're buying produce. And then some of the other, simple things in terms of bringing back, say, vegetation or plants from overseas. And we just know that kind of keeping Scotland, clean and disease-free is so important. And it's a really simple thing to do, is just not bring stuff back with you. And I guess that goes to you, Lisa, as well, that the kind of risks there to the tree health. It's just such an easy thing to stop.
Yeah, I totally agree. As James has already alluded to, our trees, our forests, woodlands and trees are in a massive danger at the moment from pests and diseases. We know due to globalisation, pests and diseases are moving much more freely across our borders. And over the last 10 to 15 years or so, our trees have been massively impacted by new pests and diseases that have been introduced. So examples of those, I think we've all seen the impact of ash dieback, fungal disease on our ash trees that killed around 80% of those trees. And so it has a massive impact on our ecosystems and environment, losing all those kind of native trees and all the species that they support as well. So I think from perspective of what people can do, not bringing plant material from overseas, but also just trying to become a little bit more aware about biosecurity and having a look at what you can do. So if you're going into forests and woodlands, making sure that you're cleaning your boots before you go in there, have a little boot cleaning kit, and also when you come out as well, to prevent spreading of pests and diseases around, and also with vehicles and things like that as well.
Great,
washing tires and wheels. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And I think that's really one of the take-home messages that we want to get across really for Plant Health Week is the fact that all of us have to play a part in terms of where we buy our plant material from, and also recognizing that when we go into the wider environment, really that we can play a part in ensuring that pests and diseases are not spread around the country. But I think another area that people need to pay attention to is online sales and where that material actually comes from. So I think that all of us should be asking questions, both in the garden centre, but when we're purchasing things online, as to what the origin of that material is. I'd like to maybe open up the discussion now, and I don't know if others feel if there's anything else that the general public can get involved in that can help us with in terms of sort of protecting plant health. And I think in many respects, I suppose that forestry, or rather tree health, is maybe one of the areas that the public can play a part. So James, would you like to maybe say a little bit on this?
Yeah, thanks. Again, it's really important that we find out what's going on and what's happening out there. And the public have a wonderful role they can play in this, just because they're out in that environment, in the trees, and they can see what's happening. And we have the ability to report anything that people find online through what's called Tree Alert. And if you Google Tree Alert, you'll see it come up online, and shows you how to actually put the information in. And that allows us to follow this up and find out what people are finding. We can send inspectors to have a look and see what's actually there, what's going on. And reporting the information is so important. We do our best to look at all the forestry in Scotland, but there's 1.5 million hectares of forestry here, and it's very hard to cover all of it. And so the more the public can play in actually feeding that information to us, the better. So that's the general public, but we also have a system which is Observatory. And this is trained people, members of the public, who go out and look and observe in the area for us. And that again feeds us such valuable information that we can follow up and we can see how diseases are spreading or if new ones are coming into the country. So it allows us much better knowledge of what's going on, so we can actually take actions and help sort of stop the spread of any of these new diseases that might come in.
So thanks, James, for that information. Lisa, would you like to say a little bit more about the work of Observatory?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so Observatory is a network of around 200 volunteers that work right across Great Britain. And they're trained by tree health specialists to recognise currently around 22 pests and diseases that are of concern to Great Britain that could cause significant harm and damage. So they're really just, like the eyes on the ground, so helping to monitor things that we know are already here and may spread further, but also act as an early warning system for those possible new introduced pests and diseases. But if anyone's really interested in getting involved in that kind of surveillance and monitoring and helping monitor the spreads in pests and diseases, then it's pretty easy just to Google Observatory, and then there is a link in there which you can email to say that you're interested in taking part in that. I should just add that they do only recruit annually, so they tend to recruit at the beginning of the year, and they may recruit for specific areas where we're a bit low in numbers, just to make sure that it's well covered across the nation. But however, if you are interested, it's still worth getting in contact and putting your name on the waiting list. So I would encourage people to do that, but it's something you're keen on.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And Ian, I don't know if you want to say the work that the Plant Health Centre is doing in terms of outreach work and trying to get some of the messages across in terms of what the general public can do to protect plant health.
Yeah, within the plant health, we do try and get the message across, but it's often very difficult to get a message across to the general public. And the sign behind you, Jerry, is the kind of thing that people might see in airports. Don't risk it, don't bring things back with you. Actually, I think we've got more of a job to try and get the message across to the general public, to make them appreciate how important plants are, whether it's forestry, natural environment, the plants in their garden, or agriculture. And plant health has an effect on everything. And I think we just have to find a way to make people fully appreciate how important plants are in their daily lives, and to try and instill in them the need to protect it for their own benefit as well as the benefit of everything else.
Maybe it'd be quite helpful, Fiona, if you could expand a little bit on some of the work of the Plant Health Centre and specifically some of the projects that they're currently working on at the present moment in time.
So in terms of agriculture, I mean, we deal a lot with farmers and with agronomists and people working around the farming industry and producing food. But we've tried to reach out as well through school programs to just try and get people engaged in how their food is produced. And for example, some of the projects we've done with the Plant Health Centre have looked at some of the major concerns for growers. So at the minute, a lot of pesticides are being withdrawn for safety reasons and environmental reasons, but that leaves our crops very at risk from new diseases. And, as we've said, that matters because it adds to the price of food. But by sort of highlighting to people, and we worked with the Dandelion Project last year to try and work with schools. And it was interesting that, many people were unaware that crops get diseases and what they can do. So even that was it was really interesting working with school kids. They grew potatoes, and we all know that potatoes are just a big collection of diseases. So they found they actually quite enjoyed some of the disasters where, crops died, and they got an appreciation that producing food isn't necessarily simple and easy. So yeah, that kind of piece that perhaps the pesticides is less relevant to the public, but I think just trying to engage people in how their food is produced so that they get the importance, they get the choices that are made, and then can just, ask about how their food, be better informed about what they're buying and where it's coming from.
Okay, thank you. Ian, I think to some extent we recognise we're in a bit of an arms race really when it comes to sort of plant health, and that we are dealing with sort of problems here and now. And I wondered if you could maybe tell us a little bit about some of the problems which we're currently facing at the moment and how we're researching and trying to work to counteract and manage those diseases and pests in the future.
Yeah, sure. So there are thousands and thousands of different pests and diseases of plants around the world. For the UK, threats currently to the UK, there are over 1,400, which is a huge number. And we have to try and manage which ones we think are most important, because obviously we can't deal with all of them. And just to give you some examples, we're dealing currently with a pest called potato cyst nematode in potato, which is gradually spreading around Scotland. It's also very prevalent in England and Wales. And we need to try and act now to stop that spreading and getting worse, because it's going to have a direct effect on potato production in the future to such an extent that it could actually stop seed potato production in Scotland within the next 25 years, which is frightening. So we're working very hard to try and do something about that, working with stakeholders, the government, scientists, and everybody else that can try to help to improve that. Another example, a terrifying example actually, is Xylella fastidiosa, which at the moment is causing huge problems on olive trees in Italy, and it continues to spread in Italy, but it's also spread to one or two other countries in Europe. The scary thing about Xylella is that it can infect over 600 different types of plants. And if it gets into Scotland or England and Wales, we don't know what damage it could do. The one thing that we're particularly concerned about are things like in Scotland, iconic oak woodlands that could be affected, because once they've been affected and they've gone for good. It will be very difficult to bring those back. And then just a final examples, it's something like emerald ash borer. We've got huge problems already with ash dieback disease, which is killing a lot of ash trees. Emerald ash borer, we found through our research, is probably not able to spread in Scotland because the climate's too cool. But we're doing research at the moment that shows in the next few decades, the climate will change, will get warm enough that emerald ash borer will be able to come in, cause a double whammy on ash trees, and really start to do damage that we don't want. So if we can stop these things coming now, it's much better than trying to deal with them all once they're here.
Thanks, Ian. And on that theme, really, that prevention is better than cure, James, would you like to come in from a forestry perspective a little bit more on that, or develop that theme a little bit further? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, Ian has alluded to it already very much, that preventing things coming into the country is a key part of what we try and do across plants, and particularly in the forestry sector. And we're looking abroad all the time to see what is out there. And so we can prepare ourselves and try and work out how to actually stop it getting into the country to start with. Now, there are different routes these things can get into the country, and we know that ash dieback came through two different routes. Research has shown that some of it was imported on plants that came into the country, and also it blew across the channel, and some of the spores actually blew over on the wind. So it's very hard to stop the second one, but stopping plants coming in which are infected is a key part of what we try and do. So we mentioned emerald ash borer. Well, any countries that have emerald ash borer, we try and stop the import of ash trees from that country and ash timber. So it's not just the plants themselves. This can be in the timber itself that comes in, and wood packaging material that's used on ships just to bulk out the loads to stop them moving. These can all contain different pests and diseases. So there's an awful lot of work that has to be done at the borders to try and actually prevent these things coming into the country. And it's important that everyone is aware of it, so we all play our part and look and keep an eye on it. There's lots of interesting projects going on at the moment. We have research going on, and we're doing a project with sniffer dogs that hopefully we would then be able to deploy at ports, actually to smell out some of these potential pests that may be in containers, similar to drug dogs in effect. but doing it for us, for pests. So there's lots of stuff going on to try and actually prevent things coming in, because once it arrives, it is so much harder to deal with and costs so much more at the end of the day. So the real important bit is just stopping it before it gets here, and that means looking, seeing what might be there, and then coming up with the actions so we can actually do that prevention.
Okay, thank you, James. I think we should maybe conclude this discussion at this point, but I think it's vitally important that we recognise really that all of us really have to play our part in a partnership, both in terms of the government and its agencies, in terms of some of the growers and the farmers that we work with, the foresters, the retail sector really in particular, but the general public as well. So I think all of us have to recognise that we all have a part to play in protecting plant health across the country. So with that, I think we should conclude today's meeting. That's okay.